IoT devices are on the rise, and it's predicted by 2025, approximately 75 billion devices will be connected to the internet. Now, these devices can range from smart TV, smart speaker, smart bulb, smart home appliances to industrial control systems. There is no denying that these devices are smart and intelligent, designed to make our life easier and save our time. However, they come with security and privacy risks. Hi, this is Sandeep, and welcome to a third episode of Triple Threat with ScyberX. Today, we are in conversation with an IoT expert, co-founder of Pi2 and the Null community, who's a frequent speaker at security conferences like Black Hat, DEF CON, BrewCon, Hack in Paris, and many more. So let's welcome our guest speaker, Aseem Jakhar. Hey Aseem, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, it's a bit wet and gloomy. Other than that, everything is good. Right. So, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time out. I really appreciate that. Now, before I jump into my Q&A session, it would be great if you can, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Um, I'm one of the co-founders and director of research at a company called Pi2 Security Consulting. And we have three wings in the company. We provide consulting services more focused on IoT, embedded, mobile, cloud, and smart infrastructure security assessments. We organize a couple of conferences called NullCon in Asia and Hardware.io in Europe. Hardware.io focuses on hardware security. And we are right now working on a couple of products. So one of the products that I'm leading is we are trying to create a platform for IoT security testing, where users can test for security as well as the compliance of the whole IoT ecosystem.
Thank you, Aseem. Now, as you know, IoT devices are on the rise. So my question is, what are the top IoT security concerns we have in your opinion?
Mm-hmm. All right. So first, let's first define what an IoT product is. So when you typically buy an IoT product, you're not just buying one, either a piece of software or hardware. Um, IoT is a little complex than getting your hands on one software. So if you look at any IoT product, you obviously have the device, which is the hardware, which does your sensing and actuating and whatever. And then the user gets a mobile application using which the user can communicate with the device. And then there is third and the important aspect, which is the cloud, because these devices are typically low power and they don't have enough storage to store the user and telemetry data. So everything goes onto the cloud. So there are three major aspects to your IoT ecosystem or IoT product. And and if you look at it from a security perspective, the attack surface is huge. Compare this with a web application, right? The web application will have, you can count the attack surface on your fingertip. When it comes to an IoT ecosystem, it's the attack surface suddenly becomes so huge. So so it's not just one technology that you have to secure. So and your typical challenges with IoT would be the device security itself. So when I say device security, it means hardware security as well as the software security, the software that is running on the device. I mean, your typical firmware or whatever services are running on the device. So that becomes very critical. And then you have the cloud. Now, the problem with cloud is that let's say if you gain access or gain control of the cloud, you typically have now virtually access to all the deployed devices around the world. Because there's just one instance of the cloud that is talking to the device. Now, if you have access on the back end, and then you can pretty much control all the device. So the I mean, if I can't pick and choose on what are the top threats on IoT, but from a user perspective, if you look at it, it'll depend on the domain or the industry the product depends on. So if it's a consumer electronic or a home automation device, this would typically mean that user privacy is at stake. Right? If it is a healthcare IoT product, then in addition to privacy, the patient data is also very critical, and that's way more critical than the private data of user. By private data, I mean the name, credentials, uh, uh, address, and those details which will identify a person. Uh, if you look at industrial control systems, the new IoT devices, there's not much of an issue of privacy from the data perspective of the human element of it. But on industrial side as well as healthcare side, denial of service is a major challenge, because if you can make the or stop the device when it's functioning or doing a critical operation, I think that's pretty much game over for the healthcare device as well as the industrial control device. So typically the security issues will vary from industry to industry. But one of the things common which binds across all different IoT devices is the amount of damage it can cause, because now we are talking about direct interaction with the physical world or the humans. So the damage is not corrupting data or stealing data, it is also causing physical damage.
So, Aseem, how does threat landscape looks like in a corporate world, and how is it in consumers' world?
Yeah. All right, so let's start with the consumer part first, and we briefly discussed about it in the previous question as well. From the home automation device perspective or consumer electronics perspective, these devices are typically deployed in your home, and they carry a lot of private information about the user's usage pattern, and obviously users' private data as well. So I think privacy is one of the major concerns when it comes to consumer electronics, as well as some of these devices would allow attackers access to your home in a way, smart locks, um, and so on and so forth. So I think theft also becomes an important aspect, because now you can sneak into the house using any of the security systems that are deployed inside a house or a building. From the corporate side or enterprise side, it's you take all of the problems that are there in consumer side or home automation side, and plus the other problem is these devices are connected into the enterprise network itself. So your gateways that are your IoT gateways that are communicating with these sensors are part of your enterprise network. So one of the biggest challenge or one of the issues, one of the major issues is attackers coming in through these automation devices and getting access into your enterprise network. And this has been previously demonstrated as well in a lot of attacks. There was this attack on Target where the attackers got in through their HVAC systems. Then there was this attack on a smart fish tank through which attackers got access to a casino. It's on the news all over. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're just starting to see the power of these kind of attacks. And as you rightly mentioned, you're going to have billions of devices in the coming years. Uh, I'm not sure on the exact number, but we are going to see a lot of devices deployed everywhere, whether it is your home, enterprise, or any industry for that matter. If you take your home today, and if you try to count the number of computers that are there, so when I say a computer, means anything that is able to compute and communicate, you'll be surprised. You have your laptops, you have your phones, you have your routers, you have smart cameras, you have smart locking system, you have thermostat, you have uh, coffee machine or food making machine, you have vacuum cleaners, you have cameras, and so on and so forth. So if you just look at the logs of your router, you would come to know how many computers or machines are connected in your home network, and that's just going to multiply. Now we're going to have more and more and more and more of these devices. Who's going to maintain these devices? How will the enterprise or corporates do asset inventory of these devices? There's no way currently to do asset inventory for automated devices, and that's going to be a big challenge.
No, I agree. And the other thing is attackers use these devices as a launch pad to attack, to launch the attacks. So gotta
Yes.
create that botnet attacks. So Aseem, as you know, compliance is a major concern these days. In terms of compliance and guidelines for IoT security, can you tell us a bit about that?
Okay. So from compliance guidelines perspective, there is a lot of work happening around the world. Um, we are yet to see regulations come into place, but from just from the guidelines perspective, we have a lot of organizations are doing good work. So starting with, I think we have Etsy that has come up with a consumer IoT security compliance uh, standard. There is GSMA that has come up with an IoT security guidelines as well as checklist, which is pretty handy for anybody who's evaluating security of IoT products. There is an organization called IoT Security Foundation based out of UK. They have come up with a really nice and comprehensive guidelines and checklist for IoT security. There is an organization called Internet of Secure Things, or IOXT, in the US. They have they have something called as a pledge, where they have given 8 points, and they've mapped those 8 points to more elaborate guidelines like IoTSF and HC. Uh, uh, I think California has come up with an IoT security law. What is the latest thing? But again, we basically need a lot of work in creating regulations from the government perspective. I mean, guidelines are good to have, but unless they're enforced on the companies, or if manufacturers themselves say that we follow these guidelines and these compliance, then it makes it makes some sense. But till the time nothing is enforced, it is more or less good to have. And if the consumers do not demand for it, I think from consumer side, I don't think this push will come so easily, where consumers will start demanding security. But from enterprise or industry perspective, I think uh, this typically happens in terms of when you are floating in an RFP, you specify that, okay, uh, we're looking for a secure product that should have blah, 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 blah. I think that is where these compliance and guidelines should be pushed into, when the infrastructure owners are creating RFPs for manufacturers for their products. And so all in all, I think these are just coming up. It's not like a mature market as of now. People are more or less, or startups are more or less focused more on delivering the product out in the market, and then looking at at the security aspect once the product starts selling in the market. I think and this will happen over time. We will start seeing regulations come into place, where if you are a manufacturer, who's manufacturing a particular or IoT product, there will be guidelines on how do you go about creating a secure IoT product. This typically happens in from domain to domain, but has not uh, those compliance standards are I would call them somewhat outdated. If you look at industry specific standards, they do not consider the new the IoT aspect or the connectivity aspect of these devices, and that will happen over time.
In terms of your recommendation about the threats we discussed today, can you give us some recommendations?
Okay, I think the easiest one to start with would be to take one of the guidelines and follow it to the T. Because if you look at some of the guidelines, they really talk about the whole IoT ecosystem, and that's where, a manufacturer or part of the manufacturer development and security team, you really feel lost because there are just too many things to look at. So I think the best and the quickest way is to first unify your security process in terms of the products that you are building, uh, taking into consideration these guidelines. So yeah, let's take an example of IoT SF, for example. IoT SF has a checklist as well as guideline documents. Now this checklist contains itemized checks which you can do for specific components of your IoT product. So be it hardware, be it the radio aspect, be it the firmware or the operating system that is running on the device, be it the mobile part, the cloud part, the security from encryption perspective. So everything is clearly defined. All you need to do is just create a unified process based on what interfaces your product has, and then have it as part of your SDLC or DevSecOps process to test all of this. Have go through a standard penetration testing process, plus have internal security regression testing suite as well, which can test for at least the low hanging fruits or the bugs that were previously found in the product.
Do you think network segregation can also play in my
I'm not
opinion?
sure how it would be, because if you look at even the traditional industrial control systems, the whole ICS infrastructure, that is also segregated into OT and IT, but it hasn't helped much, has it? I mean, when somebody and these are mostly targeted attacks. So if somebody purposefully tries to attack you, they will find ways to pivot into different networks.
All right, Aseem. So, is there anything else you want to share with our viewers today?
Yeah. So as I mentioned in the previous question, that you need to define a process for security assessment for your products, and then have some kind of a security testing process inside your DevSecOps. So I have released an open source framework called Exploity, EXPLIOT. It's available on GitLab, and the primary purpose of creating that framework was uh, the same, that there is no unified interface for security testing of for IoT products, and it fits well within your DevSecOps process, because then you can, since it's open source, so you can utilize the framework, you can create your own set of test cases that are specific to your product if you are a manufacturer, and you can one of the things that you can do is you can use it as your security regression testing suite, where once the product is done, it goes for security testing, the tests run, and then give you a final test fail, pass fail, pass fail, pass fail. Plus you can also utilize the framework to create new exploits or to analyze certain data. For example, if you have to continuously analyze Zigbee communication, you can use the framework to analyze that. You can use it to analyze or communicate over BLE, which is more or less custom. So if you are a security tester who tests different products, I think this would be worth looking at, because you have a centralized place where you can just run the interface, the framework as a tool interface, and then do whatever tests you want to run based on the product. So if you've heard of Metasploit, think of it as Metasploit specific for uh, IoT hardware, IoT radio protocols, IoT network protocols, basically anything IoT.
That's great, Aseem. Thanks for sharing that information. I'm sure our viewers will find it useful. Really appreciate that.